Today, I'm going to show you how to set up a very simple automation with ActiveCampaign, or really any CRM would work, and OpenPhone, so that anytime someone fills out a web form, a lead, fills out one of the forms on your website, that they automatically receive a text back from OpenPhone more or less right away, so that they know that we've received their information and we're already working to help them. This is a great automation that can help you with your speed to lead, reducing the opportunity for that person to then go on and try to contact one of your competitors instead of working with you. And at the end of this video, I'm going to show you what I did to follow on with that, as in what happens when they text you back. All right. So Zapier already has an OpenPhone connection, which makes it, in this case, easier to use than Make or N8N or something like that. We'd have to rig a bunch of custom code. So in this case, I'm going to create a new Zap, and our trigger will be ActiveCampaign. You could use HubSpot or really any CRM because they'd all have these same basic capabilities. And so we'll trigger it whenever a tag is placed on the record. So in ActiveCampaign, there's going to need to be a workflow so that whenever the form gets filled out, the record then gets tagged. Also should be assigned to a particular salesperson and so on. But in that workflow, we want to add this tag, and then that tag would cause this Zap to run. So the first time that you do this, you're going to have to connect your ActiveCampaign or your CRM account, and that usually involves adding an API key and some other information. I didn't want to show you that, obviously, because that's private info. But I just hit pause and filled that out. And you can, as you're connecting this, in this first step, it will prompt you for this information. You can find that in ActiveCampaign in your settings under Developer. We'll just continue on. So the event that we're going to want to trigger is when a tag has been added to the contact. And the tag that we want to look for is send inquiry response text. This is what I've rigged inside of ActiveCampaign. So here in ActiveCampaign, I'm just going to tag my test account so that there's some record for us to work with over in Zapier. Yeah, here's the record I just set up for testing. So next, after we've received the form fill and identified that, we want to then reply back to them with a text. So we're going to add OpenPhone as the next module. And the event is going to be send a message. And of course, I've already set this up, but you'd have to set up OpenPhone with an API key and so forth to get this to work. To a phone number that was supplied. And we want it to go something that sounds as if one of the salespeople were writing them back personally. All right, so the message that I ended up with is, hi, thanks for contacting the name of the business. My name is whatever the name of the person who's been assigned to this account is, and that's a field I added to ActiveCampaign. And I can answer any questions you have. Would you prefer to schedule a call or keep texting? We came up with this idea because a lot of the people who will submit web forms rather than call into the number do so from the office. So they can't necessarily just answer the call during the day, and then we might not be able to get in touch with them. So we've added this as a first step, just in case they're unable to speak by phone. This gives them the option to respond by text, and then we can increase our speed to lead by not having to wait for them to respond. Here we're going to test this. And I got a message. So that's good. Now we can move on. The next thing that we want to do is then remove that tag that we had added so that this doesn't end up causing it to happen multiple times. And so that if this person ever fills out a form again, that we can add this tag to their record again and make this text happen. So go to ActiveCampaign, search for tag. It's already add remove, so we're just going to select the remove option. From here, from the first step, and then I'll do it. Let's test that. And the tag was removed, which we'll verify here. Tag is gone. Okay. So that's a simple, easy to put together automation for getting a form fill, sending and a text message automatically, and then cleaning up the tag that you had used to do so. The only thing that's remaining is to add the tag into ActiveCampaign and adjust the automations there so that the automation that picks up when the form has been filled adds the tag. I'm not going to do that right now because it's a live system, but that would be the final step. Now, next, the question that comes up is like, okay, so they've received a text message from you that says, hi, how can I help you? Well, what happens if the guy who's supposed to be responding isn't necessarily watching that main line? So the way that this works for us is that we have an OpenPhone line that whoever's going to be calling from the outside world rings, and it goes to multiple phones, one of which is the business owner and the other one is the sales director. The sales director is also sort of like a general contractor, and so he may be out in the field or talking to another customer or occupied at that time, and so he might miss that. So I built another Zap that looks for whenever OpenPhone receives a message. And that could be for a lot of reasons. So that could be somebody texting us back already. They've already got a conversation going with us, in which case we don't really want to do anything with that. Could be sales outreach, could be somebody texting a photo, could be one of the guys texting for information, could be lots of things. So there are a lot of things we don't necessarily want to react to, but if it looks like it might be a new inquiry of some kind or a response back to the message that we just sent out, then we want to be notified about that. And so what I'm going to do is set up an automation that receives every incoming text, has AI look at it and determine if it's relevant. And then if it is, it texts our sales director's personal phone number to let them know to go look at the main line. And so we start here with an OpenPhone trigger whenever the message is received. You have to do the same thing. We just set up and connect the account. Then I pass that message to OpenAI, GPT-5 Nano to be specific. And I am using, in this case, a setting that is specific to GPT-5. They have a new verbosity lever that you can mess with, which means basically how verbose, how much text it generates. So it doesn't need to be very verbose. And then I just included the other pieces of information that came along with the text, like the actual message itself, who it came from, and then the timestamp. And my prompt in this case is really doing all of the heavy lifting. And it goes, role, you are a receptionist, vetting communications and routing them to the right people. Goal, to determine the nature of the SMS message at hand and follow the procedure below to route it. And the procedure is process the message and analyze the text. If it is in response to a previous message, add the lead status false to the information you have about the message and return it as a JSON object. If it is multimedia, add lead status false to the information you have about the message and return it as a JSON object. If it is text and does not seem to be in response to any other message, then ascertain its subject to the best of your ability from the text and categorize. If it is likely sales outreach, add lead status false to the information you have about the message and return it as a JSON object. If it is likely an existing customer, then mark it as lead status false and return it as a JSON object. If it is likely a potential customer, and this is the only case we want to do something, i.e. someone with questions who doesn't know what to ask for or says things like, can you help with, and describes the nature of their project, then add lead status true to the information that you have about the message and return it as a JSON object. If you aren't sure, treat it as a potential customer. And then finally, constraints, which is what you use to limit the behavior of the model, the AI, as it's responding to you. The constraint in this case is if you don't understand the message, add lead status false and error true to the information you have about the message and return it as a JSON object. So in every case, it's going to return the object that was passed to it, the message, with all the other information about it, and what it has decided it is or isn't a lead status, and it does or doesn't have an error, and then return that as a JSON object so that we can use it later in the process. The next step is then to take the output from AI by Zapier, the ChatGPT call, and turn it into a JSON object, which you just do here by assigning it to input data.json and then parsing that with JavaScript. And then lastly, there is a conditional. And in the first path, we check to see if there is an error field. If there is an error field, then there's going to be an error message. If there is no error field, then there's going to be a fully formed object that we can use. If there's an error message, we write it to a Google Sheet that's set up for the purpose, which you can see here. And the fallback, which is the else, means if there's no error in every other case, do this. We send a text message to the salesperson saying, just a heads up, a potential lead sent us a message on the office line. Please respond from the office line at your earliest convenience, and then include the message. And that's the end of this. What I think this will help with is if we send a message to the lead and then the lead replies back, and our sales guy misses it for some number of minutes, then we've effectively neutralized the value from our extra speed to lead. But if we ping that person, tap them on the shoulder and be like, hey, check this message out, there's a much higher likelihood that they're going to follow up with it in due course. And then we're going to benefit from better speed to lead and ideally more conversions in business.